Hey, what's up everyone? Adam here with brahwegotthis, and today we're going to talk and help you through graduating from a beginner in ESO to a mid-game player. I believe that the mid-game in ESO is not discussed nearly as much as it should be, and I think a lot of times players get in the mindset that they need to go directly from a beginner to an end-game player. But there is so much in between that needs to be discussed and understood before you can really make a confident jump to the end game. I think this is where some people stop playing the game or get frustrated. And so I want to help you all out and hopefully teach you how to progress through the game in that nature. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to all the patrons. Thank you so much for all the support. If you'd like to become a patron, check out the link below in the description. And you can always follow me on twitch.tv/brahwegotthis. I stream over there if you want to watch me play live, or you can join our Discord. And you can always check out our website at brahwegotthis.com. So as you all know, I really focus on beginner content in this game because it is so overwhelming when you first start out. But I believe that a lot of you have been here a while in the channel, and I would like to come alongside of you and grow with my audience into more difficult content. And I always say that there is a lot in this game that you really shouldn't focus on or worry about when you are a beginner. But I feel like once you are out of that beginner stage, you really need to understand some of those systems I told you not to worry about until you are a higher level or had some experience under your belt. These systems are really some of the core aspects of the game that push you to the mid game and beyond. And again, the mid game just really isn't talked about a lot. So I want to go through 5 things that will help you get to the mid-game levels. So what do I consider mid-game? I would say doing vet dungeons on hard mode, normal trials, vet arenas, and even vet DLC dungeons are, in my opinion, considered mid-game or higher mid-game, if you want to say that. I consider the top in-game pushing trifectas on DLC dungeons and vet trials as the top of the top in-game in a way. But honestly, all those things I just mentioned are in-game. It's just everyone kind of has a different level of that, and I think if I had to categorize them, I would put the DLC dungeons, vet hard mode dungeons, vet arenas, and normal trials in that mid-game category. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the importance of your traits in ESO. These are something that I tell you when you start out not to worry about that much, because you really shouldn't stress about it. Well, when you get to CP 160 and your gear will drop the same level, you really need to start gearing for the right traits, okay? Because traits are important. There are a ton of ways to do this. I have a lot of guides on this, but in general, to keep it short, traits can be farmed for in overland, trials, or dungeons. If you're looking for a divine's trait on a burning spellweave piece of armor from City of Ash, you can farm the City of Ash dungeon until you get one. Another way of getting the ideal trait can be obtained by transmuting your item. This is done in a transmute station, and you need to basically have 50 transmute crystals to do this, and that will allow you to get the ideal trait that you would like. If I wanted to get the Swamp Raider Arm Cop to be a well-fitted trait, then I would just go here and use 50 crystals. You also need to have that item's trait specifically researched, or you can't do this, okay? You obtain transmutes from running dungeons, PvP, and other activities. This is why researching is so important, because again, I tell you guys this in my beginner series. If you haven't checked that out, check that out below in the description. But researching is so important because this plays into a massive part of the mid and the end game. You also can recreate a piece with the exact trait by reconstructing it if you have obtained the item before with the item set collection system. Again, you need to have the trait researched, and it's right here in the reconstruct tab. So if you found the opulence of burning spellweave, you can just recreate it, but depending on how many pieces that you have collected, the less the cost of the transmute will be. But let's talk about why having the right traits are so important. They carry a huge buff for your build that some of you may not understand fully. And the best way I can really explain that to you is that if I'm on this stamina DPS character, right now with these pieces on my body with divines, this is buffing my Mundus Stone by like 63.7%, I think it is the total percentage, if I'm doing my math correctly. And so whatever your Mundus Stone is, that's going to get buffed. So our Mundus Stone is actually weapon damage. And so if these are not divines, if these are like invigorating or training or well fitted, right? You're missing out on that weapon damage, like flat buff, you know what I mean? And so traits are extremely important. And the reason I tell you not to worry about them so much in the beginner stages of the game is because it's not going to affect you that much. But once you get to the max gear level, and once you get to a point where you're done questing and all that stuff, you really, when you go for your build, you need to make sure that you are using ideal traits. You don't have to use all divines if you don't want to, but using the ideal traits really matter for your build. The next thing I want to talk about is passives and skills and how much weight they play into your build. I always say don't worry about your passives when you are a beginner. Focus on getting quests done, getting skill points, learning about your build. But I also say when you get to the mid game or when you get to a certain point, you need to have your passives and skills and understand how much of a boost they do to your damage, your resistances, your healing. It is insane, you all, okay? Let me just show you how insane passives are, okay? So again, I tell you, once you get past those stages and you have those skill points, you can start focusing them into that. But if we just take this character and this is a Dragon Knight, right? Let's look at the passives for the Ardent Flame. These are insane, okay? So look, increases the damage of your burning and poison status effects by 50%, okay? 50%. When you apply burning to an enemy, you restore 500 magicka. When you apply poisoned to an enemy, you restore 500 stamina. We have poison ability, poison ability, poison ability, poison ability. It's insane, okay? That passive's insane. Searing Heat. Increase the damage over time of your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, Dragonite standard abilities by 33% and duration by 4 seconds. Insane. This is one of the other big ones. Increase the damage of your Flame Area Effect abilities by 6%. Decrease the cost of your Stamina Poison abilities by 25%. Okay? Let's go to Draconic Power. Increase your spell resistance by 3,300. Increase health recovery by 5% for each Draconic ability power slotted. Okay, and it has another ability there as well. Burning Heart. While Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received by 12%. Iron Skin. Increase the amount of damage you block by 10%. Okay, you guys understand the point here. These passives carry a lot of weight. The Undaunted passives can increase your stamina, your magicka, and your health. They cover a lot of ground and a lot of reason that you might not be getting the stats that you're seeing on some of these builds that you follow, or people are telling you these numbers that they're hitting. It could be because, one, you don't have the right traits on, and two, you don't have the correct passives, okay? Again, I don't tell you to worry about that when you're under CP 160 because it's not that big of an issue. But when you want to get into mid-game content, you need to make sure you have your passives. The third thing I want to talk about is item sets. Item sets in ESO are some of my favorite things to use and experiment with. The 5-piece set bonuses are just fantastic for players. And as a mid-game player, you really can use some of these 5-piece sets to your advantage. Before we get into the advantage, though, you need to understand how these sets work, okay? Item sets in this game have a 5-piece bonus that have a stat that they scale off of in some cases, not all the time, okay? You'll see these noted in certain sets, okay? So what this means is if you don't hit a certain threshold of that stat, the item set is going to be less effective, essentially. So you really need to pay attention to what you are trying to build for. Are you trying to build all crit, or all spell damage, or all weapon damage? If you mix and match, usually it's not going to yield the best results, okay? And so, for instance, if you look at the set Azure Blight Reaper right here, this says it does that disease damage to the target, scaling off the higher of your weapon or spell damage. So if I'm on a character and I'm building for crit, that's not going to help this set, okay? Yes, it will help in some ways, right, with crit, but we can get a higher proc damage if we spec into weapon damage. So you could run a set like Witch Knight, which is going to give you weapon damage, versus a set like Leviathan, which is going to give you critical. Okay? So making sure you're actually going into that fully is really going to help you be more effective than if you were to go crit and weapon damage. So that's just something to keep in mind with those sets. Another thing that players don't realize is that two-handed weapons count as 2 pieces in a set. So you can have a 2-hand on the front bar and jewelry and have a 5-piece bonus. This is how builds run arena weapons, okay? So you see this bow, this counts as 2 pieces for this Swamp Raider set. The last thing I want to tell you about sets are using proc sets to your advantage, okay? These are sets that can give you some basically free damage to help you in the mid game, okay? This is something, and this is one of my biggest tips for mid game players, from beginners to getting to the mid game. Proc sets are some of your best friends, okay? And the reason they're some of your best friends is they're easy to use, okay? A lot of times they just have to be procced. That's literally all they have to do, right? So for instance, all right, for a Zerblight Reaper, when you deal damage with a damage over time effect, you apply a stack of Blight Seed to your target for 5 seconds. At 20 stacks, that explodes, dealing 10,693 disease damage. As long as you're putting damage over time on a enemy, you're going to get that disease damage for free, right? The reason I push proc sets a lot of times for players that are still learning and that want to be into that mid-tier area is because it allows you to still get a little bit of a boost to your damage without having to do anything super complicated. Because here's the bottom line. If you want to push the top end DPS, the top end game, you're going to have to practice your rotation a lot, and you're going to have to get good at that rotation, okay? If you wear a set that just is flat bonuses like weapon damage or spell critical, you're going to have to be able to take that set. That set is basically going to be as effective as how skillful you are and how good you are at your rotations. That's why those sets are some of the higher end game sets, because they give you just flat stats that are just mathematically testing better than the proc armor sets, because a lot of proc armor sets don't test as well as some of these builds that people are making where they're just stacking critical, right? And so if your damage is going to be, in correlation with how well you do the rotation, if you're not doing your rotation well, you're not going to be getting a lot of the potential out of these flat sets, okay? But a set like a Zerblight Reaper takes way less skill to use in a way, because it's literally just, if you put a damage over time effect on the person, it's going to add towards the stack, right? So it's like a less learning curve because it's less you have to worry about in a way. So if you might not be doing your rotation perfectly, but if you can get some free damage by just doing your rotation decently, it's going to help you out in the long run. The fourth thing that I want to talk about is understanding basic mechanics. You really need to understand this, because not only is the first three things that I told you prior to this going to help you, but mechanics are important, and you need to understand what things mean when you see them on your screen. When you get into more challenging content, these are going to be vital to help you be successful in content, because you can know your rotation and do a lot of damage, but if you keep dying to a mechanic because you aren't doing something you should be doing, it really doesn't matter, okay? So different mechanics are just going to be something that you're going to have to notice when you're in the dungeon. And so I can't go through every single mechanic with you, because certain dungeons have certain mechanics. But if you, for instance, see a beam coming from an ad that touches a boss, that beam probably means something. That beam probably means that the boss is getting healed and you need to kill that ad, okay? So instead of just mindlessly attacking the boss, pay attention to things like that. Whenever you see red lines and the boss is doing something, he's channeling something, that means that you can interrupt that boss. That means you need to interrupt that boss. Sometimes the tank takes care of that, but sometimes the DPSs need to take care of that, okay? Whenever you see yellow or white lines, that is usually, that's an attack that they're charging up. It's a heavy attack and you need to block it, okay? So these are just simple mechanics that you will see in dungeons. There's so many other ones as well, but these are simple things that you need to pay attention to if you want to be on that next level. The last tip that I want to talk about is sequencing your skills and rotation, and understanding why skills are used the way they are. And I have a lot of guides on this, and there's a lot of guides out there on this that help people do the rotation better, okay? But what I mean by that is, obviously as a beginner, you have an idea of your rotation. You know you have skills here, all this stuff, right? But really what's going to help you get to the mid game is understanding the idea and the reason why you use certain skills and when to use certain skills, okay? So I'm going to try to give you guys a brief example of this. So for instance, you have multiple types of skills. You have a single target skill, or a single target damaging ability. That single target damaging ability could just be a single target execute. It could be a single target damage over time, okay? So for instance, a single target damage over time would be Venomous Claw. As you see, it hits one enemy and it lasts for 14 seconds. And over time, it's going to deal 19,852 poison damage over 14 seconds. Okay, so that is a DOT, a dot, or damage over time. This is an ability that you technically could spam, but you don't have to, okay? So that is a single target attack. Now, you've got area of effect attacks, right? That is like arrow barrage, right? This is like an area of effect attack. This is going to have an area involved that is going to have damage that's going to be doing that to whatever's in that area, okay? You've got caltrops, all right? This is an area of effect ability, right? Again, it's going to have a circle, so if we use caltrops in that area, things are going to take damage. Arrow barrage in an area, things are going to take damage. You have to understand that some of these abilities are not meant to be spammed, okay? Because if you spam caltrops, you're just going to run out of stamina. You're not using this for like the initial damage or anything. You're using this because you want to apply major breach and you want to have a damage over time, okay? So you don't just keep spamming this. Skills like acid spray, you technically could spam if you want. But spammables typically are skills like Whirling Blades. Whirling Blades is a spammable that you will use to clear mobs to attack the boss. And when when a boss is under 50% health, or an enemy's under 50% health, it's going to do more damage. That's technically called an execute. So these are the type of skills you would like to spam. And then you have skills that are like auxiliary skills and or just slottable skills that are only on your bar for one reason. Auxiliary skills could be like heals, right? Resolving Vigor. This is a heal for my character, so I only use this when I need to use it. Another skill that is like a skill that I'm only using for the slottable is a skill called Camouflaged Hunter. The only reason why I'm using this skill is because when this is just on my bar, I gain Major Savagery, which increases weapon critical. And so that's the only reason why I'm running this, really, is because I just have to have this on my bar. I don't have to ever use it if I don't want to, okay? So you have things like that. You have skills like buffs, like Igneous Weapons. This is going to give you Major Brutality and Sorcery. So the key is understanding what each of your skills are supposed to be used for. And that is what builds your rotation and allows you to have a more fluid and a more efficient rotation, which then allows you to become better as a player and pushes you past mid-game. So for instance, I'll go through like a sample rotation of this character and why this is the rotation. So what I would do is I would do my buff before I go into combat, and then I lay down my AoEs, okay? So I'd lay down Air Barrage, and then I'd lay down Caltrops, okay? I'd also use my Poison Arrow as well, and then I would switch my bars. Then what I would do is I would lay my Breath out, because this does poison damage over time as well. I do my Venomous Claw, puts damage over time as well, and then all I would do is just spam my Whirling Blades, because that is my spammable attack. Then when everything is ready on the back bar again, I would do my AoE, my Caltrops, my Arrow. I'm not really sure if I want Acid Spray in this rotation yet. This is a build that I'm working on. But that is essentially kind of how you build your rotation. And if you know how to sequence these skills, then that is going to help you in the mid-game. So those are my 5 tips on helping you go from beginner to mid-game. There are a lot of other tips probably that I could give you, but I had to try to keep this very concise for you. And I tried to touch on the things that are some big things that I see that beginners struggle to understand or struggle to graduate from, you could say, that help them become mid-game players. These things are just not that difficult, okay? So getting the traits, right? Getting the right traits just takes time to get them. Understanding what item sets scale off of, it just takes you looking like, hey, okay, this scales off weapon damage, so I need to build for weapon damage if I want to get the most out of this set. And then, just slotting your passives in your skills only takes just getting skill points, right? These are not difficult things to help you get to the mid game. It just takes understanding, what exactly that is. So I hope this helps you. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, heavy tech that bell icon to stay up to date on all the content in the channel. Again, we have all this content on the website at brahwegotthis.com. We also have Twitch streams, twitch.tv/brahwegotthis, and we have an amazing Discord, so you can join all those. You can also follow me on Twitter as well. But until next time, y'all, just remember to have faith, be great, and I'll see you on ESO.